So welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We are starting with the DXY on the weekly time frame. We are still in a clear bullish momentum run. So we did actually close the gap here to this higher time frame value area and are approaching the last bigger value area here on the higher time frame. We still do have a small area of interest in this area to the left, which then would be the last line in the sand. After here, it's all open to go back to new highs. On the other hand, we have to be aware that we are approaching, or we are actually already in an area where price also could roll over. In a technical view, it would make sense because we still have a gap to fill here to the low, but we also have this gap here to the upside to close. So we have to be aware that it could go either way, or it would make sense to go either way from a technical point of view. Going down straight to the 1 hour time frame, but we can already see that we are still in a clear bullish momentum. So price started to actually form already a bull flag continuation pattern. So it would make sense for price to continue from here. We do have a small area of interest in this area, which is the start of this last smaller bull flag continuation and basically retesting this low. So we have here an area we have to be aware of. So as long as price is trading above this area, in this area here, I'm definitely leaning to the bullish side. If price, however, starts, or if the DXY is showing some bearish momentum closing below this area and giving us some form of bear flag continuation, that would be the time I would change my bias and would look for dollar weakness in the near future. As long, however, as we trade above this area here, I'm clearly biased to a continuation long. So it would make sense to continue from here, but I would not be surprised for dollar to go back or retrace a little bit further and then move from here to finish the last leg. So let's move on to the other dollar related pairs, starting with Euro US dollar. We start on the daily time frame and we see it's more or less the inverse picture, right? So we do have still a gap to fill to this more significant value area here. So there is some room to go. And we can also see it was quite an aggressive run, right? So we would not be surprised to see a bigger retrace. And we actually had a nice structure last week. However, this structure was turning around on a week. We are here on the daily time frame and did not retest anything more significant to the left. We still have this low here, which is below the higher time frame value area, and we would also have this last liquidity point here, the start of this small continuation pattern before we then broke the low more aggressively here to the left. So if we that now combine with the positioning of the DXY, if the DXY is still in the momentum run, so we can see that it needs not too much to retrace. So it would make sense for price to at least retest this low and then showing some form of a slightly bigger bear flag continuation, and then I would entertain a short in this area. However, if the DXY is retracing a little bit further to the second level we discussed before, it would make sense also for Euro US dollar to retrace into this area here and form kind of a bigger structure before we then sell off from this area. But as long as we trade below this area here, we are still leaning to a short continuation. Australian dollar, US dollar looks similar, is a little bit more in no man's land. Here we are on the daily time frame. We see we are already below, or we are trading through this low here and are now just like kind of filling this wick to the downside, but we are still in a momentum run to the downside. We can also see that the Australian dollar was accumulating more volume in this area, and just proportionally it would make sense for Australian dollar to close the gap here with this next impulsive leg to the downside. Going to the daily time frame, it's very similar to the euro US dollar pair, we have some areas which we could look for a start of a continuation. So I would like to see for price to at least tap into this smaller liquidity point, preferably into this area here, and giving me some form of a more bigger structured continuation flag, and then I would entertain a short in this area. However, if DXY is retracing more, we would still have, it would make sense for price to retest this low here, which aligns with the low of the last bear flag continuation, or even up here. So somewhere in this area with the structured flag, I'm all over a continuation short. US dollar Canadian, we were looking for actually we had a few trades. We start here on the daily. We had a few trades on the way up here. And then we were actually waiting for price to show some form of reaction as soon as we approach this value area here, which is the high, right? The top of the structure, which we approached with this 1, 2, 3, with the 1, 2, 3 ascending wedge, right? And then we can see that price impulsively with a strong momentum just broke through this area. We said this might be an option. This could be possible because price was accumulating more volume here, and if that's enough, then there is more room to the upside. So with such a strong momentum and closing with 2 full days outside the structure, I'm leaning more to a continuation long at the moment. Going to the 1 hour time frame, we can see we have some areas of interest. We have a small liquidity point here, a small base, which could be the base for a continuation pattern. So the minimum I'd like to see is a structured flag into this area, and then I would entertain a continuation long here. I'm also okay to see some form of a bigger, more complex structure into the high, into the last high, this value area here, and I would then entertain a long from here. This might even be better because it would accumulate more volume and could potentially drive the dollar higher up. So overall, as long as we are trading outside the structure, this bigger structure, I'm leaning to a long. If price, however, breaks impulsively back into the structure and then is showing some form of a bigger bear flag continuation within, I'm okay to change my bias and go for a short again. But that might take some time. We will see. As it stands now, clearly leaning to the long continuation. US dollar Swiss francs is similar as well. We are already in a momentum run. We did approach the first more significant area of interest to the left, and we still see a strong momentum. We see if US dollar Swiss francs is in a momentum run, it does not need much consolidation to move price higher up. We have here like 2 days and then quite a strong move into the next area. We do have some more areas, and we also have a gap to fill here to the high. We also have a gap to the low. Keep that in mind. So if DXY suddenly rolls over, it would also make sense for US dollar Swiss francs to roll over, and technically that could happen somewhere in this area. But as it looks at the moment, going down to the 1 hour time frame, we are still in a clear bullish momentum run. We do have a small liquidity point here. We start already forming a bull flag continuation, and the minimum I'd like to see is to have a more structured bull flag continuation. So if I get a third touch, which is aligning with this area of interest here, I would be okay to entertain a long in this area for a continuation for higher up. So the yen pairs, we have the yens on watch, at least one on watch more or less every week. Some of them approached some higher time frame value areas and are positioned slightly better than others. We start here with the Australian dollar yen on the daily time frame. We are monitoring this pair for quite some time now. Price did actually tap into this last bigger bear flag continuation here, and then started very nicely with a strong impulsive move to the downside, but then failed to connect. So going here to the 1 hour time frame, we see this very nice we can see that price here rolled over. You could even argue there was a head and shoulder in here, and then had a nice strong initial impulsive move to the downside, but then started to form a more complex and messier structure here, and then eventually on Friday gained some momentum and started to sell off more aggressively. So we have no clear liquidity points here. We don't have anything to the left to really consider. We have this small low which price started to lose steam, which is the low of the middle section of this ascending channel we have to the left. And we also know that the yen pairs, they tend to retrace and move quite a bit before they then continue, right? So we have a very small liquidity point here on the lower time frame, but I think it's only visible, yeah, on the 15. Actually, it's only visible clearly on the 5 minute, right? It's a small liquidity point from the last impulsive run to the downside on Friday. So I'd like to see for price to form a more structured flag, so something like that. I'm okay with the 2-touch flag into this area here with the clear, more weighted time frame reversal pattern, candlestick reversal pattern. Then I would be okay to enter a short. I would also be okay if price would retest this low here. So if price is starting to retest the low and then give me a lower time frame continuation pattern, I'm okay to enter a short for that as well, a continuation short. So as long as we are trading below here and getting some form of bearish continuation pattern, I'm leaning to a continuation short after this initial move, initial sell-off after this consolidation here from last Friday. So New Zealand dollar yen looks very, very similar. There was a nice trade here actually on the 4 hour, but that's already a week ago when we were tapping this high here. So there was a trade, an entry here, and we see same picture. Price tapped into this value area here, sold off aggressively, but then failed to continue, right? And formed a more complex, messier structure here, and then finally gained some momentum on Friday. However, here we can see as well, price tapped into this area of interest, but is still within this bigger consolidation overall. So after this momentum run, for price to lose a bit of steam on the last 4 hour candle, it's not really concerning. I don't see that as a turnaround already, and I see it more as a continuation or the start of a bigger consolidation for the next leg down. So as very similar, we have a small liquidity point on the lower time frame, and I'd like to see a more weighted, bigger structured continuation flag for a continuation to the downside. Then pound yen as well, similar. They are all very, very similar. We start here as well on the daily time frame, and these are the 3 yen pairs which actually come from a value area here. They were all tapping the bigger or the last bigger bear flag continuation to the left before then they sold off, right? And pound sold off first quite aggressively, then retraced almost everything, and now we see this strong sell-off on Friday. Going down to the 1 hour time frame, we see this is a less significant low to the left, right? So you could pick any one. So they are not really significant. It's just aligning with this. So more significant is we are trading below the low here. And I would like to see for price to form a bigger structure and retesting the low to then enter a short in this area. Then we have Australian dollar, Canadian dollar. Starting on the weekly, we had these a few times on watch as well. We are still, it's a bit undecided, right, in this case. So we are still in bearish weeks. Actually, all the weeks closed bearish, but we ended up on quite a strong week. So it's almost 50% of the whole candle is a wick. So we had quite some retrace towards the end of the week. And we are also trading above. We go here to the 4 hour, we again above this small area of interest here, which is also the low, which got respected here, the last more aggressive retrace in price. So, and we can also see that this whole move here was more corrective, so it's quite slow. It's not really an impulsive move to the downside, so which means that I'm leaning more to the neutral side. Overall, my tendency is even more to a bullish side in Australian dollar Canadian. And we can also see that we actually fulfilled from here to here, that's more or less 90% of this whole move. So it would also make sense for price to turn around. It's not necessarily to close the gap here already. So, and then going to the 1 hour time frame, we can also see that price was initially respecting these structures fairly well. We traded below here. Then we had multiple chances to sell off. We had this V shape here, a V-shaped recovery, but price then failed to sell off in this area. Then we had a continuation pattern with the 1, 2, 3. Price then again failed to sell off in this area. Instead, price even started to form some form of a bull flag continuation. Is now kind of tickling up, right? So for me, I would like to see price gaining more bullish momentum. And if price is gaining more bullish momentum and is closing above this last consolidation to the left and we see some form of a bull flag continuation, I'm all over to enter along in this pair. The same goes for New Zealand dollar Canadian. New Zealand dollar Canadian, however, was actually tapping into a more significant area of interest here to the left. We have one here, we have one here, we have the gap to close to the value area here on the low, and we can already see here on the daily this is more of a reversal pattern, right? So we had this price was initially selling off quite aggressively, then we have this corrective squeeze, we had one aggressive sell off to the downside tapping into this area of interest, and we have now a bullish momentum play or a bullish reversal pattern on the daily time frame, which then allows me to actually change my bias, and I'm looking here more for a bullish continuation. It's very similar. Price had to retest this low here in form of V-shaped recovery, then failed to sell off here, instead moved up and started to, we have this bullish wicks here, all right, and then started to break up to the upside. So I'm leaning more to the long at the moment. Very similar if price is gaining momentum here and then starting to form some form of a bull flag continuation here, okay. But in this case, because we are coming from a more significant area of interest and because we are already in a confirmed reversal pattern on the daily time frame, I would be okay to entertain a long in this slightly messier structure here. If we get a very clear cut 3-touch continuation, which would then align with the smaller lower time frame area of interest or a liquidity point to then entertain a long entry in this area. And last we have Euro Australian dollar. Euro Australian dollar, I'm leaning towards more short. We still have this gap to fill here to the low. We have a gap to the high, and we have a gap to close here to the low. And we were discussing this pair a few times already, and we had this nice initial sell-off, which unfortunately started here more or less in no man's land, and we are still looking for price to close the gap. My tendency, as you can see, is more towards euro short overall. So on the daily, on the 1 hour time frame, we can see that we are in a squeeze. This is clearly a corrective price action, and we did not tap into this liquidity or this area of interest here yet. However, we can see that price started to roll around and losing momentum. So preferably, I would like to see for price to move up one more time, even if that's corrective, that's okay, and then give me an impulse back in and a smaller time frame lower time frame bear flag continuation to enter a short in this area. That would be my preferred outcome. However, if I see early next week price gaining some bearish momentum and then closing below this low, trading below and giving me some bear flag continuation in this area, I'm okay to enter a short here, because it could also be that price is coming all the way back down here before we then move back up to close the gap in this area. So this would then still be more than enough room to manage the trade to this low here. Yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for the week. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.